on this Sunday morning, we want to get right to the breaking news overnight. A fresh provocation from North Korea. It could be extremely concerning.
The regime there announcing it has carried out one of its most powerful nuclear tests yet. In fact, its most powerful one yet. They're calling it, quote, a perfect success.
Now, North Korea claims it was a hydrogen bomb or an H-bomb capable of being mounted on an intercontinental ballistic missile. The government of North Korea released this photo of its smiling leader, Kim Jong-un, inspecting what state media describes as the loading of that H-bomb into a new long-range missile.
North Koreans were seen cheering in the streets when the announcement was made. The specific claims have not been verified, but the artificial earthquake caused by the test was several times stronger than tremors from earlier tests. It reportedly shook buildings in China and in Russia.
It's being reported that President Trump's national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, had an emergency phone call overnight with his South Korean counterpart. And this morning, President Trump is tweeting about North Korea's latest move.
We have team coverage this morning, and we start with ABC's Ian Pannell in our London bureau. Ian, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Dan. Paula, this is a highly provocative and dangerous move. Just over 2 weeks back, President Trump praising North Korea for appearing to back down from its threat to launch missiles towards Guam, where, of course, US forces are based. But now it's clear Pyongyang is driven to develop a nuclear weapon that could put America within range.
Overnight, the North Korean state news agency announcing what's believed to be its most powerful nuclear test yet, a hydrogen bomb fitted for an intercontinental ballistic missile. Striking new images coming in of Kim Jong-un inspecting the bomb that North Korea says has unprecedented strength. The announcement coming hours after the USGS detected a 6.3 magnitude explosion near the site where all of the nuclear tests had been conducted underground. South Korea calling it an artificial earthquake, Japan saying it may have been caused by nuclear tests. Seoul believes the hydrogen bomb is 4 to 5 times stronger than the one dropped on Nagasaki, Japan in 1945.
It's definitely the largest one that we've ever seen them do before.
This latest provocation further highlighting the tensions between the US and North Korea over the rapid expansion of its missile program.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States.
Just weeks ago, President Trump making a bold statement in reaction to Kim Jong-un's threats to Guam.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
And just 4 days ago, the US joining forces with South Korea for joint military exercises, flying bombers in a show of force after Kim Jong-un launched his 21st missile since February.
Even its close ally China is strongly condemning the test, as is Russia. South Korea wants America to deploy what it says is its strongest strategic assets to completely isolate Pyongyang. The question now, how can President Trump respond? Dan, Paula?
The world on high alert. Ian, thank you. And as Ian said here, one huge X factor in all of this is, of course, President Trump, who, as Ian reported, has threatened the North with, quote, fire and fury.
And as Ian just mentioned, South Korea is calling on the U.S. to deploy its strongest strategic assets. That could mean reintroducing nuclear weapons. And ABC's David Curley is at the White House for us this morning. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Paula and Dan. There was no word from the White House overnight, but this morning a strong rebuke from the president of North Korea and some criticism of a U.S. ally. In a series of tweets starting at 7:30 this morning, the president calling the North Korea action a, quote, major nuclear test, adding, quote, their words and actions continue to be very hostile and dangerous to the United States. He called the North a rogue nation, which has become a great threat and embarrassment to China. And then he went after the U.S. ally South Korea, saying it is finding, quote, as I have told them, that their talk of appeasement with North Korea will not work. They, the North referring to, only understands one thing. But the president doesn't say what that one thing is. We do know, confirmed by South Korean sources, that H.R. McMaster, the national security advisor here at the White House, did talk to his counterpart in South Korea overnight, a 20-minute phone call. The South Koreans had been warning that the North might test a nuclear weapon any day now. Mr. Trump has been talking to those in the region, talking to the Japanese leader yesterday, the South Korean on Friday. Some very strong criticism from the White House this morning. Dan and Paula.
David Curley, thanks for that update. And for more on this breaking story, we want to bring in retired Marine Corps Colonel and ABC News contributor Steve Ganyard. Steve, thanks for joining us this morning. And first and foremost, Steve, if these claims are true, that the North has a hydrogen bomb and can use it on the U.S., how concerning is this to you?
It's a big concern, Paul, because this is a step up in nuclear capability. In the past, they'd only demonstrated what we call a fission bomb, which is what the U.S. used in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Moving up to a thermonuclear device is a big step up. And as Ian said, looking at between 5 and 10 times more powerful than the previous test. So this is a big step up in capability, very worrying when you put it together with those pictures of Kim Jong-un last night showing a miniaturized thermonuclear device.
So the president, as we've been saying, has promised fire and fury, but what options does he really have here?
Dan, other than a preemptive strike, which nobody wants to do because it could end up turning the whole peninsula into fire and causing millions of casualties. So one of the problems here is not being able to do military. So what do? You turn to some sort of economic sanction. As David said, we've had 3 discussions with the Prime Minister of Japan, so maybe there's some sort of economic sanctions that, that the UN will ramp up here. But right now we have no other options besides economic sanctions and begin to think about what is a containment strategy for this new nuclear threat.
And we've been reporting all morning that South Korea is asking the U.S. to deploy its strongest strategic assets. Where do you see this all going, Steve? War, or are we going to have to live with a nuclear North Korea that could be proliferating and selling weapons to Iran and Syria?
Paul, I think what we heard out of the South Korean president today could be code for requesting the United States to reintroduce tactical nuclear weapons to the Korean Peninsula, U.S. tactical nuclear weapons. These would be airdropped weapons. It's a back-to-the-future kind of Cold War capability that had been moved out of both Europe and out of South Korea back in the 90s. So it's back to a much tenser time, but I think it's going to be something where we're going to have to learn to live with a nuclear North Korea.
Thank you very much, Steve Ganyard, for your analysis on a busy Sunday morning. We really appreciate it.